Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel, Scholar Opportunity Nexus. Today I'll be taking you through numbers and classification of numbers. So without much ado, please let's dive in. And also before we start, don't forget to subscribe, like, and then share this video with your friends. And also help them to learn and get to also be parts of what we are doing. So I'll be taking you guys through the number system, what is numbers, how numbers are classified. So let's get started. So what is a number? A number is what? A numeric value which is used to represent quantity of an object. So in everyday life, we see that we use number in so many different forms. We use them in counting. We use them in we use them to determine the time. We also use it in counting things in time and stuff. So that's how we use numbers. So depending on how the number is represented on the number line. So now we are talking about what? So let's talk about classification of what? Numbers. So how are numbers classified? So depending on how the numbers are arranged on the number line. One here. They can be classified into two major groups. So we have real numbers, and then we have complex numbers. We need to understand these numbers in order to help us in what we are going to learn next. It is those function, domain, and code. We need to understand numbers real good before we jump into those things. So I'm going to take each of them and then I'll talk about them. So before we talk about the real numbers and the complex numbers, so how are these numbers classified? So the idea is that these numbers are classified based on their properties and representation on the number line. So you can find the real numbers, these real numbers, on the number line, but you cannot find the complex numbers on the number line. So that's the difference, the main difference between the two of them. So real numbers are on the number line. Complex numbers, you cannot see them on the number line. We'll go into details into the various type of the real numbers that we have. So the next thing to do is we are going to talk about the next set under real numbers. So real numbers, or you can also call them you can also call it the real number system. Real number system. So real numbers can be divided into two forms. Okay, they can be divided into two forms, and we have them to be rational numbers, and irrational numbers. So what are rational numbers? So rational numbers is any number that can be written in the form A over B. So rational number is any number that can be written in the form A over B, where A is a number, let's say a real number, and B is also a real number. Okay, so if you can write any number in the form A over B, then it is a rational number. So let's say we have 7 over 1, 10 over 2, 1 over 1, 0 over 1, 2 over 5. Yeah, so since we can write these numbers in the form A over B, all these numbers can be called what? Rational numbers. And then there is the opposite is the what? Irrational number, which is under the classification of real numbers. And these numbers, they cannot be written in the form what? A over B. You cannot do this. You cannot write them in the form A over B or as a ratio of what? Two numbers. And some of these numbers are what we know as what? Let's say square root of 2, pi, then Euler's constant. Euler's constant. All these numbers, they are all numbers. We know that pi is what? 3.142 continuous. So all these numbers, you cannot write them in the what? In the form A over B. So they are what? Irrational numbers. Please know the difference. So irrational numbers cannot be written in the form A over B, and rational numbers can be written in the form A over B. So you can see that from here, you don't have any more classification of what? Irrational numbers. So this is where they have stopped. But for rational numbers can further be classified into a more bigger set. So in rational numbers, let me move to my next slide. In rational numbers, that's when you will find what? Integers. In rational numbers, that's where you find what? The integers. So then what are what? These integers that we are talking about. So integers is a set of what? Whole numbers with negative set of natural numbers. So it's a set of what? Whole numbers, like whole numbers and they are negatives. Let's say it like that. Whole numbers and they are negative. So then we have to talk about whole numbers and then natural numbers. But since I said we are talking about, like, we are taking it from a bigger set into like a smaller set, we'll talk about the whole numbers and the natural numbers in a bit. So the integers are just like, so we have like the numbers, the whole numbers, and what? They are negative. So we will be having -1, -2, -3, 0, 1, 2, 3. The set of all these numbers, if I'm doing set, then I'm supposed to put dot at the beginning and the end because it is infinite. Okay, so the set of this is what we call the integers. Okay, it's what we call the integers. And in the integers we have what? In the integers, that's what we have what? The whole numbers. Whole numbers are what? Positive integers and 0. So they are what? Positive integers. Okay, I wrote integers this way. Integers and 0. 0 is part of this set. So it's made up of starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, dot. So these are what? The whole numbers. They are what? Positive integers, or set of positive integers, and 0. Then in whole numbers, we have what? The natural numbers. What sometimes people call the what? Counting numbers. Counting numbers. So counting numbers are what? Positive integers. They are positive integers. So they are not whole numbers. They are only positive integers. So we start from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The set of this is what we call what? The natural numbers. So I have a pictorial diagram that will help us to understand this. So basically what we have is that we have a set that contains, let me draw this on the next slide so that it will be nice for you guys to visualize. So we have a big set that contains all the numbers that you can ever see in this world. Then in that big set, the numbers have been divided into two. The ones that are in this box are called the real numbers. The real numbers. And the ones that are outside, uh, let me just say they are outside here. They are called the what? Complex numbers. Complex numbers. Then in complex numbers, they are further divided into what? Two. The ones that are inside here are called what? The rational numbers. And the ones that are outside are called irrational numbers. The irrational numbers are further classified into what? Integers. And the integers are classified into whole numbers, and then we will have what? Counting numbers. So let me show you the pictorial diagram on the other side. Yeah, so this is what we have: classification of numbers. So the numbers are divided into real numbers and complex numbers. So I didn't talk about complex numbers, but I'll take my time and go through complex numbers for you to understand. And we'll be building in the future, we'll be building a full course on only complex numbers. So stay tuned. Okay, so the numbers are divided into real numbers and complex numbers. And then the real numbers are further divided into what? Rational numbers or irrational what? Numbers. And rational numbers are what? Numbers that can be written in the form what? A over B. But these numbers here cannot be written in the form what? A over B. So they are called irrational. And these are rational. The rational numbers are further classified into what? Integers, which are what? Negative or positive what? Whole numbers. Negative and positive whole numbers. They start from negative infinity to positive infinity, including 0. Then integers, in integers, we can find what? Whole numbers, which are 0 or positive what? We can find whole numbers which are positive integers and 0. Okay, they start from 0. This sets start from 0. Then in whole numbers, we can find what? Natural numbers, which are what? Positive integers. They are positive integers. Okay, whole numbers are what? Positive. Natural numbers, which are also called the counting numbers, are positive what? Integers. Meaning that they start from 1 to what? Infinity. So that's the basis of this. Now let me take my time and then go through the complex numbers for it. So complex numbers, which is a major branch under what? Numbers. This course is not like the complex numbers is not the main focus of this course, but then we'll focus more on complex numbers in the future. So complex numbers are numbers that can be written in the form a plus what? B I, where what? I is equal to square root of what? Negative 1, where I is the square root of negative 1. And then A and B are what? Real numbers. In other words, A and B can be written as what? X over Y. A number over another number. Now let's talk more about this. You see, sometimes when you are solving your work and you get square root of what? Negative 2. Maybe your calculator will tell you that the answer is defined, the undefined, or an error, or you tell yourself that this cannot be solved, so there is no solution or something like that. But then that's not always right. That's when complex numbers what comes in. So we use I notation, which is what? Square root of what? The square root of negative 1. So talking about this square root, we have what? The square root sign. And the thing under the square root is called what? The radicand. So this is the radical. And the thing under it is what? The radicand. Okay, the radicand. So it's also good to focus on this one. So this is how we write what? Square root. The complex numbers. So this is what? How we focus on the complex numbers. Okay. Yeah, so this will be okay. So this is basically what you have to know about complex numbers. So in the future we'll learn more about how to deal with complex numbers, addition, multiplication, division, and all the stuff that you need to know on the complex numbers. So this is the complex numbers that we have. So we can have real number. I didn't talk about this. Complex numbers, we have a plus what? Bi, right? This part is called what? The real part of the complex number, and this part is called what? The imaginary part. It's called the imaginary part. Yeah, so the real part and then the imaginary part. So we can have what? Imaginary numbers. They are numbers in the form IB, where I is square root of what? -1. Where I is square root of -1. Okay. Yeah, so we are going to add on to the numbers. So after getting all these numbers, the numbers can further be classified into what? So we can have more numbers, which is we can have something like even numbers. What are they? We can have odd numbers, and then we can have what? We can have prime numbers. You also need to know all these numbers, have a fair idea of them before we go into the next chapter. Then we can have composite numbers. So what are even numbers? Even numbers are numbers which are exactly divisible. So they are what? Exactly divisible by 2. So if any number can be divisible by 2, then it is what? An even number. So we can have -4, -2, 0, 2, 3, that's a 3, 4, 6, ... So this is a set of what? Even numbers. Any number that can be what? Divisible by what? 2 without leaving what? A remainder. Without leaving any remainder, then that is what? An even number. So sometimes people argue if 0 is what? An even number. So what do you think? Is 0 an even number? Just give your comments under the comment section. Then we have odd numbers. Odd numbers are numbers that are not what? Exactly divisible by what? 2. So what it means that if you divide them by 2, there is high probability that you get what? A remainder. So the set is like we can have these values -9, 17, 25, and co. So all these are what? This is just another set of what? Odd numbers. Okay. Then we have another numbers which are called the prime numbers. And prime numbers are what? Are numbers that have exactly 2 factors. So they have exactly what? 2 factors. and these factors are 1 and the number itself. So these are what we call what prime numbers. An example is what 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. All these are what prime numbers. The only factor that 2 has is 1 and 2. 1 and 3, 1 and 5, 1 and what 7, 1 and 11. And they continue. There are lots of them. We have composite numbers. Composite number is a number that has more than what 2 factors. So this one has more than what 2 factors. More than 2 factors. So an example of a composite number is what 4. Why 4? 4 has which factors? 1, 2, and 4. It has what 3 factors. So it's having more than 2, so it's a composite number. We have 6, 8, 9, 10, and so on. So all these are what composite numbers. So we'll end here, and then in our next video we'll be talking more about how we can be able to use our understanding of these numbers in application to, let's say, functions or domain and stuff. Thank you for joining, and please, as a reminder, try and then subscribe to our channel, and then yeah.